I'm Ellie. I work in the Yes Youth Understanding team at the Youth Endowment Fund, which is a team set up to ensure that young people's voices help to inform the work that we do. Today, we're here to talk to you about PAC, the Peer Action Collective, a programme funded jointly by the YEF, the Co-op and the I Will Fund, a joint investment between the National Lottery Fund and the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. PAC is a network of young people across England and Wales who design peer research projects related to the systems and supports that young people need to keep them safe from involvement in violence. Local delivery partners employ peer researchers aged between 16 and 25 to carry out research in their communities with other young people. Their research goes through an ethical approval process to make sure it is rigorous and that it is safe, and young people shape each stage of their research, from design to fieldwork to analysis to dissemination. Today, teams will be sharing some of their findings from their first research project, and they will be going back to their communities to do some more research soon. PAC, though, is not only a research programme. Social action leads are also employed to work with groups of change makers to turn their research findings into social action to make a change from what they found. We have 7 teams working on PAC across England and Wales, and today I will be asking 3 of these teams more about their projects to help paint a picture of the programme. I will ask the team some questions and bring you, the audience members, in to ask your own questions, which you are welcome to do out loud or in the chat. If you're interested in the work of PAC in other locations, please get in touch using the email address my colleague Colin will drop into the chat, and each team presenting will drop in their own details. So let's kick off. Firstly, it would be great to hear from the Exeter team what you heard from young people through your research project. Can you introduce yourselves and tell us more about your main topic and your findings?
I'll go first. Hi, I'm Molly. I'm a social action leader for Exeter PAC team. I'll tell you more about the research, but I don't know if Finley wants to maybe also introduce himself for a second.
Hi, I'm Finley. I'm also a social action lead, as working as part of the Exeter team.
And yeah, so our focus topic was on trusted adults and the role that they play in young people's lives. Our main question was, how can the environment in which young people meet and interact with trusted adults be improved to provide better support to reduce youth violence? So we kind of had our main focuses, which were what types of trusted adults are there that young people have. Teachers was a big one. Then we had support workers, family members, the police, activity leaders, all that sort of thing. And then where do young people find their trusted adults? Mainly school, obviously, but then we also have youth clubs. We did a little bit on online trusted adults and maybe where they can be seeked out. And then friends, parents as well was one that came up that we didn't expect. And then we also looked into what makes a good trusted adult and the sort of characteristics that they had. Two of the characteristics really were listening and also good understanding of young people were the main ones that kind of came out. And we studied around 40 young people from around Exeter and within Exeter, from a diverse background and have diverse life experiences. And then we did a mixture of one-to-one interviews and also group interviews. And then can you go on to the next slide, please, Ellie? Thank you. So our key findings were that for many young people we spoke to, a key barrier to engaging with trusted adults was a lack of youth provision in safe and secure spaces. So many young people felt that within Exeter there weren't many places for them to go, but they also didn't feel safe in the places that maybe that were already there. And then that kind of links into the second point, where a lot of young people told us they didn't feel they had enough information on how to access a trusted adult outside of their home environment. So there's not a lot of advertising, there's not a lot of kind of knowledge of what the places are that young people can go. And then there's also barriers such as they can't afford to do extracurricular activities as well. One thing that did come up was a lot of young people felt they were misunderstood by adults, and they felt there was a lack of understanding of young people and how young people kind of react to things, or youth mental health was a very big one that came up. And I think within our next research project, we will kind of seek to look more into that. And then many of the young people we spoke to felt that services and organisations containing potential trusted adults lacked the awareness of the role that they played, kind of linking to the point that I just said of they didn't really have the training in youth mental health. A lot of the young people that we interviewed felt that maybe they didn't understand neurodiversity as well. So there were kind of those barriers they felt to making a connection with those trusted adults. So those were our key findings. And later on, Finley will talk about the social action that comes from that. But thank you.
Thanks so much, Molly. That was brilliant. Pat Cymru, you're up next. Could you introduce yourselves and tell us more about your project? I know you're also focusing on the role of a trusted adult through your research, so it'll be really interesting to hear how your projects and findings are similar or different to that of the Exeter team.
Yes, hello, I'm Cameron. I'm the Deputy Project Lead on PAC. Jack is also on the call, who'll be presenting the Social Action Partner for you. I don't know if you want to say hi, Jack.
Hi, everyone. I'm Pat Cymru, Social Action Lead.
Perfect. So yeah, we've also been researching into trusted adults. So what we wanted to look into was the sort of who are the trusted adults in young people's lives and where can they actually be found. So we're covering in Wales. So within our research phase, we wanted to look into the different types of trusted adults that young people have in their lives or are aware of, and even the ones that they're not too sure of as well. So we broke it into sort of like two different characteristics, looking at both primary trusted adults and secondary trusted adults. So a primary trusted adult is someone who has like a responsibility as like a caretaker or has a role within the community to look after, educate and protect a young person. And then a secondary trusted adult is someone that a young person would pick to talk to and get help from, because it's like completely voluntary to engage with these forms of trusted adults. So one of our research questions that we asked throughout our interviews was a continuum question. So the continuum question had like a sort of, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being, not so comfortable and 5 being very comfortable. How comfortable would you, sorry about background noise. How comfortable do you feel talking to a certain type of trusted adult? And we had a handful of different trusted adults in there, but these 6 on the screen now are the ones that kept popping up. So police, for the primary trusted adults, young people said that stop and search happens too often within like young people in their communities, and that there's not really a positive relationship between them and the police. And then we come down to teachers. Young people feel that the teachers don't sort of engage with the young people, and I put quotation marks, correctly, and they feel that there's a massive power dynamics between them, which makes it a lot harder for them to actually go to them and open up and talk to them if they need any help and support. And then coming down to the third primary trusted adult that keeps occurring is social workers. So young people feel that they're sort of like forced to engage with social workers, and a lot of them don't have a sort of understanding of what the young people are going through. And they've also said that they feel that they're treated and spoken to, again in quotations, like children, because mentally the young people feel that they have sort of, where they have so much experience from their own personal experiences, they feel that some of the social workers don't understand that, and they still treat them as if like, they're very young children and fragile, when in reality they're not. And then coming on to secondary trusted adults, we have youth workers. So young people said that they feel safe when working with their youth workers, as it's like voluntary, and they take time to get to know the young people as well. But some young people did bring up that they feel that some youth workers might need to have some sort of lived experience to actually engage and work with the young people, just to get that sort of better understanding. And then we have mentors. So mentors, young people said that they love working with their mentors, as they're there for the young people, sort of like exploring new opportunities. But quite a few young people that we did speak to wasn't actually aware what a mentor was or where to get one. But then a handful also said they have a mentor and they know what a mentor is, and they work with their mentors. And then our third secondary trusted adult then is case managers. So young people said that they appreciate working with their case managers because they can provide personalized sort of support and guidance to support the young person. Sorry if you hear any background noise. It's very busy in the office. And they can also help young people who struggle with like this sort of anger management and parental issues and mental health. So they're the sort of 6 trusted adults that keep occurring in our research from both primary and secondary. And then Ellie, if you want to go to the next slide, our common themes. So we don't have the specifics of what these issues are, but the common themes that kept popping up was stop and search amongst the police. Barriers is another thing that kept popping up that came into education settings, but it also come up overall to like sort of all different types of trusted adults. And then there's support as well. So where can young people find the support? And that sort of comes into the access to services as well. So where in Wales are these places that young people can actually go to get these services? And then we've got communication as well. So the way that trusted adults engage with young people, but then also the other way around where how can young people engage with trusted adults? And then we have intolerance, which is looking at into different behaviors such as like racism, homophobia, and sexism. And then the last one is power dynamics. So we don't have the specifics for them, but moving further with the research, they're the common themes that we want to look more into and be like, why is this an issue? What can we do to prevent these, and why are young people saying these? So yeah, that's what we've got from our research phase so far.
Thanks so much, Cameron. Interesting, lots to dig more deeper into there for your second research project, so thank you for sharing. Finally, unlike Exeter and Wales, Lancashire PAC, I know your research focused more on education and the education system, so it would be great if you could tell us who you are, share more about your project and what you found.
Hi, I'm Adil and
I'm Fatima.
I'm JJ.
I'm with the Lancashire PAC leads. So next slide. Our research, next slide.
No, you could.
Our research topic is, research question is, do young people affected by violence have an equal voice in decisions made at school? Next slide. The reasons for our research is how young people are affected by violence in schools. Northwest is focusing on how young people who are disassociated, isolated, or do not have a voice could be at risk of being affected by violence. This research question is important because it addresses whether young people affected by violence are given an equal voice in decisions at school, which extends beyond just behavior-related issues. Schools are key environments where young people spend a significant part of their lives, and the decisions made there, whether about education, mental health, support services, or school policies, have a distinct impact on their well-being or future opportunities. The outcomes are to help schools understand the unique challenges faced by students and how they can better support their needs, ensuring that students have a voice so everybody can feel valued or heard. Next slide, please. The focus group is why did we interview these people and who do we think would be the right people to interview? We discussed as a group who we thought would be the best young people to interview. We based our criteria on which how young people may be affected by ACEs. So our rationale was why we chose these young people. We chose young people at risk of being expelled or suspended, homeless young people, young offenders, young carers, young people in care, young people with disciplinary issues. We tried to focus on young people who were either being affected or could be on the verge of being affected by violence. By exploring if those affected by violence are heard equally, we can identify whether their needs and experiences are being considered in shaping school policies. If these young voices are not included, it may deepen feelings of inclusion or neglect, potentially worsening the effects of violence. Ensuring they have an equal say can lead to more inclusive environments where all students feel valued, heard, and supported. This research could also help schools better understand the challenges faced by these students and improve the support systems they offer. Next slide, please.
So in terms of carrying out the research, we encountered barriers to conducting the focus groups more in schools because many were hesitant as they were fearful of the outcome. So we identified young people for research from other areas. Some of the areas we visited, there was Night Safe, which is a short-stop shelter for homeless young people, youth clubs, third sector, community centres, community gardening, youth groups. Next slide, please. So our four main findings were, as I've seen on the slide. So the first one is relationship with teachers. Some young people had positive experiences with teachers who went the extra mile to ensure their safety and well-being. These teachers were described as kind and attentive, providing strong support. Many students felt unsupported, especially in dealing with personal trauma, bullying, or behavioural issues, leading to a loss of trust in school support systems. It's important to recognise that teachers can face challenges in building relationships with students. So a recommendation was to reduce teacher workload to improve relationships and reduce stress. The next finding was mental health. Many young people found it difficult to express themselves, especially when it came to personal issues, and this was further fueled by unsupportive teachers. Many young people felt that teachers needed more training around managing mental health incidents. Some young people could approach some teachers, however, felt their teachers were mostly unapproachable. Some young people felt betrayed by the teachers discussing and belittling their personal issues and challenges. Recommendations for this was improve mental health support and trauma-informed training for teachers and enhance the counselling services. The finding 3 was disciplinary measures. Most students did not agree with the school rules and how they were enforced. Most students felt the school rules were ineffective, petty, and unreasonable. To quote, this was usually in relation to uniform rules and sometimes homework, however, usually not directly related to classroom learning. Recommendations were to provide more effective disciplinary measures with student input into improving rules and sanctions, and detentions and isolations time could be used to understand student behaviour and address its root causes. The final finding was student voice and influence. Young people felt that their voices weren't heard or acknowledged and were only done as a tick box exercise. Many students saw potential for student councils to become more influential and provide meaningful opportunities for contributing to school policy instead of being tokenistic. Some students felt there could be more opportunities for them to influence school policies and felt excluding in decisions that affected them. And some recommendations: create a genuine platform for student voices to be heard, ensuring school councils are effective and reflective of all students, especially those who feel marginalised. And another was the school council should be more active in improving equality and education and not just tokenistic. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much, Fatima and Adele, for going through that. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so we can all see each other. That's later. Does anyone in the room have any questions for the peer researchers about their first research projects or about the Peer Action Collective before we move on to talking about social action? Joe.
Yeah, thanks everyone. These projects sound fantastic and really getting at some key themes that we're really interested in. I'm Joe. Nice to meet you. I work at the YM. Just on the last project that's played there, the Northwest team, you mentioned value potentially of school councils. Did you speak to any young people who thought like their school council like wasn't tokenistic and like was being like done quite well? And is there anything that we could like learn from that? Like what does a good school council and like good student voice look like?
Well, in my experience, I'd say actually there was only one individual who mentioned how they actually had a positive experience, and surprisingly, they were the one who was a prefect. The rest of the individuals who we talked to weren't in those leadership positions, so they felt sort of out of touch with the system and felt they didn't have a voice at all. So I think there's definitely work to be done in building up sort of the confidence of students who aren't always in the student voice sort of teams, and really enhancing their opinion and their value in decision making.
Thank you. That's really, really useful.
There's there are more questions in the room and a few in the chat. I'll get to those in a second. But Anna, after you.
It's related to the other question in the chat about how you decide the questions. I just wondered if there's any scope for kind of like external companies to kind of have a question that the PAC teams can research for them.
I don't know if any of the teams want to come in on this. Why don't you go in, Cameron, if you've got a response?
Yeah, I don't know why he's put 3 hands up. But yeah, so when we were creating our questions to ask the young people, we worked with like the peer researchers first off, to get everyone sort of like experiences together to be like, how do they sort of relate to trust adults? What does trust adult mean to them? And seeing if we could answer the questions ourselves to start off with, because it's we're all young people. We a lot of us have just left school or college and uni. We sort of have the sort of idea of this is what we need to sort of figure out. So we work with like the peer researchers to figure out then what sort of questions we need to ask, and who to ask them to and who to aim them at, but then also make them broad enough for anyone to answer, but not too sort of narrow where it only fits a certain category of young people. But then we also run ours through the professionals as well, because we are quite lucky at Mac where we have people working at Mac who are like trusted adults. So we worked with them and we sort of did the interviews on them as a practice run to be like, let's see if they can answer the questions, and put them in the perspective when they were young people or answer it from how old they are now. So it's sort of just, it's very much trial and error, just to see how the questions work with different people. But to find like the sort of questions that you need to ask, I'd say it comes down to working with just all the young people, because they see like the problems in the communities and schools and relationships with these trusted adults and other things as well. So yeah, that's what I'd say for that.
Thank you.
Can I expand a bit, Cameron, just to make a bit more, to flesh out Anna's point a bit more? So I think one of the things, if I'm not wrong, Anna, you were asking about is whether external people can have an influence on what you ask. And I think that as a result of your findings on Stop and Search, you did have a partner come to you and say, can we do some more research into Stop and Search and can you help us design the questions? And I think that that is happening. Is that right, Cameron?
Yeah, so we've been working with the Violence Prevention Unit. So they work closely with South Wales and North Wales Police, and we've been able to actually get access to like their data as well. So we're able to work with them to sort of figure out the questions that we need to ask. But then another thing to quickly mention on top of that, we work with a group called Cascade at Cardiff University, and they're a group of peer researchers as well, focusing on all sort of different themes. So we can work with them as well, and we sort of bounce off each other's questions, be like, oh, that's really interesting. Even though like the topics we're researching into are completely different, seeing how some questions are asked, we can work with them like that as well to just develop and expand them. So yeah.
Nice. Thanks for fleshing out, Cameron.
Thank you.
Do you have something to add, Lancashire team?
We chose this question because we thought it's important for young people to have a voice, and to belong to the school, and this affects their behaviour and how they're affected by violence, and the young people are the ones who should be a part of the solution rather than the problem, and focusing on young violence in schools is key to make them feel like they're not alone.
Quite powerfully put, I think. Thank you for expanding on that. And yeah, I really think that your student voice in schools and kind of the school setting is so important. So really glad that it's coming out through your research and sure that it can be used by people in the school and more broadly. Rachel, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. My name's Rachel Jackson. I'm from the Violence Reduction Unit in South Yorkshire. I find this really interesting, and I think it's such a valuable piece of work that you're doing. I think the young person's voice is absolutely key in us making sure we have got the right support in place for young people. I'm really interested to understand a little bit more about the barriers that you had getting into schools to actually be able to do this piece of work. I find it quite alarming, actually, that you weren't able to get into schools, because I think school is key. We know that education is a massive protective factor for young people to keep them out of offending. However, we also know that a lot of young people do struggle in that school environment. So I find that quite interesting that you really struggle to get in. What did they think? What was the response? Did schools think that you were going to be sort of starting riots or something, or why were they so reluctant to, let you facilitate your consultation within school?
Sorry, I'll answer that one. My name's Mo. I'm one of the delivery partners here. We've all tried to get into the schools, whether it's the young people who have contacted the schools themselves or it was us lot. I think it's been hard for us because Lancashire PAC hasn't been delivered in Lancashire beforehand. So it's trying to break new ground for them to fully understand what PAC's about. If it's from a school's point of view, I don't think anybody would want to see themselves be seen in a negative light from a young person's point of view. But that's not what we were about. What we tried to sell it was that we wanted to help them facilitate conversations between themselves and the students. And it was really hard for them to really comprehend that. But since we had a World Café dissemination event, and it started to people started to understand what PAC is, and for us to come from somewhere where nobody's heard of PAC and trying to get that down, I think the next research one, I think we should be able to get into the schools, but we're learning, the schools are learning, so it's not something that they're saying that it's really bad for us to be in there. I think if we can help them as a business plan, we've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks. If we can sell PAC as a business plan, how can we help the schools move forward? How can we engage with those students who are engaging with and the ones who might be being affected by PAC? So we will try. I think the schools just need to understand us more and start to understand what PAC's about.
And what percentage of schools within Lancashire are still sort of local authority-led schools, and what percentage are academies? And did that make a difference as well to the responses that you got?
I would say even though there's 3 different organisations, there's my charity that's called Blackburn Darwen Health and Living. There's Inclusive North, who are the lead organisation. We have Child Action Northwest, and we cover patches there's East Lancashire, there's Blackburn and Darwen, and there's Central, which is Preston, Leyland, going over to Kirkham, and trying to get an understanding, because it's such a big, vast area. We've been trying to get into the schools. The schools, I would say, percentage-wise, there's still about, I would say, 60 to 70% that are the mainstream, and academies. There's a very small amount of academies here, and just to kind of give you an understanding, obviously Co-op Foundation are one of the funders for this, and within our areas there's hardly any Co-op academies as well. So it does it does hamper us in getting into the schools. But like I said, we're halfway through here now, and hopefully through the second research we'll be able to get into more schools, because we have broken some new ground with some of the schools and they're understanding what we're about. Hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much. Like I said, I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Right, I think one more hand in the room and then I'll go on to a couple of the questions in the chat. But Susanna, what's your question?
Yeah, I'm from Lancashire, guys, so just going to put my email in the chat in case we can get together and sort of join forces. I think someone else has put in the chat around how much schools are bombarded. We've just done a survey across Lancashire. We did some co-production with some younger students around what questions we need to ask, because obviously the police only know about the violence that gets reported. So we're interested in feelings of safety and also where other violence hotspots might be happening that we don't know about. And we were struggling a little bit because the schools, I think they were being bombarded with surveys, offers for workshops and this and that and the other. So only by getting in with certain individuals that we already had a contact with and a connection with, did it get higher up the agenda? So if I can help with that, that sounds absolutely amazing. What's being done. I wasn't really aware of all of that, and I can't stay for much longer because I've double booked myself. So I just wanted to jump in, and I'll put my email in the chat, and hopefully I can connect up with a few people and take a few of the things that have been discussed already forward, because I think it's really valuable. Thank you.
Thanks, Susanna. I'm sure they'll take you up on that. We have a double. I'm going to merge a couple of questions in the chat now. For any team that would like to answer this question. There was a question about building trust with the organisations and the young people in your communities, and how you managed to do that as a PAC team, and also how you managed, or if you managed to, in your opinions, to reach a kind of representative group of young people, so that these issues you're talking about are representative of the young people in your community. So trust, representation. Who would like to come in on that? Angela.
Yeah, hi. My name is Angela. I'm from the Exeter PAC team. I think when we think about boundaries and problems, you think about the empowerment and voice, and also community isolation. I think community isolation is a huge problem when it comes to things like this, especially with mental health and what the Exeter PAC team are looking. Inclusivity is a huge problem, because when there's community isolation, not many people are willing to engage into the whole system like PAC and research and social action. So you have to build bridges instead, and it allows for people to actually feel inclusive. Like there's inclusivity in general when it comes to these kind of systems. I feel like you need to facilitate dialogue, and that's the most important thing, and understand people's perspectives and break down all stereotypes, because when it comes to work like mental health or trusted adults, there's stereotypes from like 20 years ago, because mental health itself in the education system is really outdated. It's from 2002 when it came into the Mental Health Act. So I think it's always about understanding what young people want, and understanding what other communities want as well, because I think that's the most prominent thing. And I think once you break those boundaries, I think Exeter did it really well with including all types of people, from Black communities, Middle Eastern communities, Asian communities. It breaks this predominant stigma around research, and it allows people that actually use the activities and social actions and sessions and recreational events. So yeah, I think that's the best way.
What a passionate and comprehensive response, Angela. Thank you. I think that you're absolutely right that the PAC teams in all locations have spent a long time building this trust in their communities. So before any research was done, I know that they were all in the youth groups. They were kind of spreading the word, and that was the important work that needed to be done before you could go and talk to young people about quite hard topics. So thank you for that. There was one, I think, final question before we move on for you, Cameron, about how the distinction between what you call kind of primary and secondary trusted adults was made.
Yes, so within PAC, we sort of, when creating the questions, we wanted the young people to sort of have an understanding. So for the young people, like our first question was, what does trusted adult mean to you? And if they didn't know how to sort of answer that, we had a sort of definition of what we would define as a trusted adult, like overall. And then to like gather the research and break down the sort of different characteristics that we're looking into, we thought put them as primary and secondary, sort of splitting them apart, being like primary, okay, what can primary be? Primary is obviously trusted adults, which are like, they're in young people's lives no matter what. So these people are like police and teachers, because they're there by authority. They have to be there for the young people because they have a duty to protect and educate. And then when we look at secondary, it sort of comes down to also like a parent, for example, or guardian would come into primary because that's like their core role. But then when you look at secondary, it's like a family friend could come into that, or a youth worker, because it's voluntary. It's not, they're not there to, be there by, for young people, but they're there to support young people if the young people want the support from them. So it's completely voluntary. So it's very much like one you have in your life, the other you can pick if you want to engage with them. So that's how we sort of categorize them like that, because then when looking at the research, we were able to like see then who are young people more likely to engage with then. Is it the people who are put in power to look after the young people, or the people that the young people would prefer to voluntarily go to and get help and support from. So that's how we broke it down.
Thanks, Cameron. I think it's really interesting when you were going through your findings, the kind of 6 types of adult that came up the most. I think that as a kind of organic, who are the young people, who are the adults in your life? I think the fact that they were the 6, I think is, a really interesting finding in and of itself. I'm going to open up for more questions in a bit and loop back to the chat, but I'm really anxious to talk about the kind of second part of the Peer Action Collective, the next bit, which is the social action. So I mentioned it in the introduction that a key part of PAC is that the young people in their teams take their research and turn that into change in their communities through social action projects. So I'd love to hear from all of you a social action project you're working on, and tell us more about that. I'm going to share my slides again, but I think Finley, you're going to talk to the Exeter teams.
Yeah, so hi guys. So for our social action, what was really important, we felt, was that we directly used the findings from our project to come up with our plans. So what we found, as Molly mentioned, was that young people aren't really aware of the existing youth provisions out there in sort of a format that's accessible. So our focus for social action initially was around creating an interactive map which shows the youth clubs that are available around Exeter, and we wanted to make this accessible via a QR code that people could scan, so that it's like low maintenance and there's not a lot of pressure around it. People could just get out the camera and scan it at any point. And our plan for this is for it to be updated as new provisions come about and are created. And we also are looking at the moment to include a bit about the trusted adults who are available at that specific youth provision, so that young people just have an idea of what to expect if they do go there. I think what we're looking forward to with the QR code as well is that there's the potential that with our other enrichment programs, we can add those onto the map, and then that would be kind of nice, because then we can see the difference that we're making from the community in the community, and how our ideas are being put out there and available to young people. Yeah.
Thanks, Finley. I think that's a really interesting part of your kind of map idea, that you're looking to say that a young person can see the map, but they can also see the adults that they might engage with there and learn a bit about them before they go. I think that's a really good idea to kind of get over some of the barriers to trust that might immediately present from the unknown, right? So yeah, thank you for taking us through that. I think next we've got Pat Cymru. Jack, are you going to tell us a bit more about your social action projects? Also, remind the picture of me there, but it is a part of a really cool social action project.
So yeah, currently at Pat Cymru, we've done a few different workshops. To start off with, we did a tie-dye workshop where we had both young people and trusted adults in a room, creating tie-dye t-shirts, where it was like a safe space for open conversations between trusted adults and young people. At the workshop, we had youth workers, teachers, case managers and police there. And it was more of a workshop to almost like give young people an opportunity to communicate with people that they wouldn't usually have conversations with on a day-to-day basis. Then we did our trusted adult walk. Ellie attended this, so I'll tell you a bit about that. So the trusted adult walk was a room which we divided into 2 halves. One half was to show what life is like for a young person who has or who hasn't had a trusted adult. Who has or had a trusted adult. The other side shows what life was like for a young person who didn't have a trusted adult. So everything that we focused on within the Trusted Adult Walk, they were all real stories, all real quotes and themes that young people had brought forward to us. And the people walking around were able to interact with each theme that we'd found throughout our research. We wanted to create this on a large scale as a showcase for all of our research, which hopefully we'll be able to display in like a museum or somewhere we can do it on like a larger scale social action rather than it being in our office. And then after the Trusted Adult Walk, we held a roundtable discussion where the young people were able to ask questions around like the stop and search, the barriers that young people have with trusted adults, the support, access to services, and the communication between young people and trusted adults. And then next for our social action, we've currently got plans to do the 22 sonnets, which will be like almost like a book, but we're going to hold it both digitally and physically, where we'll go around the 22 regions in Wales and like get young people to write poems or create a piece of art that we can incorporate into this book for young people to almost like see how they can start breaking down the barriers between trusted adults and young people, which almost like gives them a chance to start again, to like build relationships with new people. And then we've got a documentary that we're developing, and we're also setting up a podcast which we're currently reaching out to trusted adults to take part in.
Thanks, Jack. Any Welsh colleagues on the call, I very much am an advocate for the Trusted Adult Walk. I think it was a way to immerse yourself in the findings of Pat Cymru and really kind of understand some of the perspectives in a really creative way, which is one of my favourite things about working with my peer research colleagues. They think of ideas to display their research in a way that others might not. So thank you, Jack. Finally, I think we'll probably have JJ, is that right, to tell us about the Lancashire Pack social action.
Yeah, so our social action idea for Lancashire Park, and we've got an idea for a board game toolkit called Classroom Chaos. And the reason we came up with this is because we want to encourage students to start having conversations with teachers in a safe space to help build building trust with them. And the board game is interactive and fun, with both teachers and students starting on a level playing field, so there's no hierarchy. It can be used in a class environment, and the changemakers which we have recruited are going to facilitate the sessions. The board game is made up of different aspects, including question squares and discussion squares. These topics and discussions are then recorded and are discussed in the next session. And then these topics are rated and placed in a table, prioritizing how realistic, achievable, and time sensitive they are. There are also resources available to carry out the solutions designed by the young people and supported by the teachers with them.
Yeah. I mean, you can have a look at the design. We have got the design. We have been working on the design. So JJ, show that for the camera. I don't know whether if anybody can see it. Go close to this camera there. Right in front of you.
Maybe
so
everyone can
that's
spotlight
roughly, them. Go back down this. Yeah, that's what. You can see it now. So work in progress, but that's what we're doing. Oh, sorry. Was it in front of you? Keep moving. There we go. You can sit down, JJ.
Thanks, JJ and team. Again, we've got really creative ways for people to engage in all of your research findings, and we're seeing a lot of research informing this action that you're doing, and I think all of them have different types of legacy. They make you look at the findings in a way that a typical research report might not. And I'm just seeing so much value come out of all of them, and all of the trust and relationships you've built in your communities already to get people on board with what you're doing. So yeah, brilliant job, everyone. One last question. We haven't got very long, so maybe each team could spend a minute or two telling us about any kind of key takeaways that you have from your time on PAC, I think you've been working on PAC just over a year now. So what do you want the people in this room to know about your involvement in PAC? Hansela, do you want me to present the slide?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll do that now. Here you go.
I think for me as well, like I've been in PAC for quite a while. I was in the Bradford team beforehand, and then I went to the Exeter team as well. But the personal growth and development for every PAC peer researcher and social action lead is really good. Growth as a team and community growth. And the PAC journey has been incredibly rewarding. I think when you work in the community, you realize like how much help there is needed from individuals like us, but also at the same time what needs to be done for the future. And you're inspiring so many other people in your local community, especially young people, even older generations, to realize that there's so many boundaries that young individuals in the 21st century are actually facing. And community growth is really important as well. I feel like that's one of the prominent things that happens with PAC, is that when your name is up there and when PAC is represented, in a sense, it's not in the sense of making publicity, but in the sense of making social action, making the genuine change. So I feel like for me, it grows you as an individual. I mean, it's like my 4th year of PAC now. I was in PAC 1 project as well, and you learn so much from it, and you see how much the project changes, and you realize when you work as a team, you get to know each other. Like we always like used to call each other like like family in a sense, because we all used to like always like work with each other, enjoy with each other, do everything with each other in terms of like helping the community, to just even going out after as well. And you realize that the outcomes of PAC are not short term, they're long term. The implementations of systems that you work on, like whether it be board games to working with trusted adults or making mental health facilities, they work really well. So I think what you learn from PAC in terms of like research to engagement with community will like help a lot of young people when in their careers and for the future as well. So yeah.
You're on mute, Ellie.
Thank you. I was thanking Hansela for that really candid reflection of what you think the value of PAC is, and agree that you've made a lot of community impact just personally in the years you've already been working on PAC. So thank you. Lancashire PAC, you want to come in?
Yeah, so for Lancashire, I think all young people there sort of want to self-develop, and being part of PAC has given that opportunity. We've got loads of knowledge and we've had the chance to develop our skills, such as our critical thinking, problem solving, and our sympathy skills as well.
We also reflected the fact that it's great to represent and showcase the platform for young people who are affected by violence, so that they are heard and we can support them and help them. And it's the fact that we bonded as a team and supported each other no matter what area of Lancashire we come from.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lancashire team. Representation, growth, all important words, I think, when we're talking about meaningful youth voice projects. Would anyone in the PAC Cymru team like to come in before we open up for a last round of questions?
I think something I just want to throw in, because they were both amazing reflections. So it's just, if I go on, it'll just be a massive regurgitation of all of that. But I think one of the big key takeaways is self-confidence, that everyone gains a part of the project, because you all get so familiar with each other that you just don't care then. You won't stop talking. And I think empowerment as well, because a lot of young people feel that they can make change, but they don't feel like they have the power to make the change. So being a part of PAC, just a massive takeaway for that is actually showing the empowerment. So I just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a super important reflection. And just to note, in case I didn't make this clear at the beginning, I think the young people you're seeing before you're in paid roles, the organisations working with the PAC teams employ the young people to do this work and to do this job. And there's also a lot of kind of voluntary positions within the community that young people can do. So there's a lot of different ways that young people can get involved in the project. Really cool to see all of the different requests for connections in the chat. there are, if anyone wants to connect with one of the PAC teams to find out more about what you heard today, please do. We will put this on our Youth Endowment Fund website at the recording, so you can all have access to that. And yes, we'll have a lot more kind of detail on the research to kind of share with you in the coming months. So I'm sure we'll be able to do that. We have like 8 minutes though to ask more questions, and I can already see a hand up in the chat. So Samantha, was that a hand from you?
That was an accident, sorry.
That's no problem. Does anyone else have a question for any teams on any part of their work at the Peer Action Collective?
A question.
Thanks, Luba.
Hi, my name is Lua. I work at the YEF alongside Ellie and other colleagues, and also work with the Youth Advisory Board as well, of which some of the PAC members are also part of. I just want to know that dealing with these kind of serious topics, quite emotional topics, I wonder, how do you guys support each other within PAC to remain optimistic and hopeful in this space, knowing that, you know, it's impacting young people in such a way? I guess what motivates you, and how do you stay optimistic and hopeful for a brighter future that is definitely there?
Go for it, Cameron.
I think setting goals and having your mind sort of fixed on that is something that like pushes you, because it's like once you've accomplished something so positive, it's just like, oh my God, we did that. Not like I did that, it's we did that, you know? So I think acknowledging that, like doing something collaboratively as like a team, or even with like other organizations and stuff like that, it's just acknowledging that we were able to do that together because we came together. And that's what sort of motivates a lot of us here at PAC Cymru, because obviously young people don't get the opportunity to often make change. So having that opportunity is just, it's really powerful, it is. But yeah.
Team effort, really important, Cameron. Thank you very much. Anyone else? I feel good about the back and forth and the questions that we've had so far. Thank you everyone for joining. Maybe we'll let ourselves have 5 minutes back soon. But just to stress that the young people have been out and working to collect this first round of research for their first projects. It's only the first of 2. There's going to be a full report that comes out next summer, as well as local reports where everyone's going to showcase their work. You're not just going to see their work through reports, you're going to see very interactive and creative methods to see what the young people have found from their research. And across the teams, we're seeing a lot of work into the education system as well, not just in Lancashire, but also in London and in the North East. And we're seeing a lot of other work on the youth sector across our other PAC teams, across, for example, Bristol, across Yorkshire and Humber. So whatever you're interested in, I'm sure the PAC are touching on it in some way. Please get in touch, and thank you, peer researchers, for such a thoughtful presentation. It's been brilliant to hear from you. I will close us off now, but have a good evening, everyone, and see you soon.